With the right equipment and know-how, pulling apart an electric vehicle battery for recycling is relatively easy.
Are we seeing more recalls in the U.S. year in and year out now, or does it just feel like more recalls, Greg, because we pay that much more attention to them?
You feel like Tesla does get an outsized amount of interest given its relative size and weight in the U.S. and global car markets.
All that and more. So let's get to it. Tesla stock's up in the pre-market, sitting around $255.23. Despite the incredible volatility, Tesla has been relatively flat. Up almost 2% for the week. Going back a month, however, Tesla is up over 7.5%. But with the year almost over, can Tesla get to 120% gains this year? When I placed this 255 call earlier this week, I was sure hoping so, but with the loss of about 50% around noon or so, I think I'll make a decision on whether or not to roll this thing or just bite the loss. If I do roll it, it'll probably be for a couple of weeks from now.
With the right equipment and know-how, pulling apart an electric vehicle battery for recycling is relatively easy. GEM is one of the largest recycling companies in China and processes about 10% of the country's spent EV batteries. There's no shortage of material for GEM and its competitors to work with. China's EV revolution is helping the country's decarbonisation goals, but also fueling waste. One of the worst examples being the notorious EV graveyards filled with vehicles that quickly became obsolete after they hit the road.
Didn't see any Teslas in that graveyard. Odd. China's been doing this for quite some time. They've got over a 30% adoption rate of battery electric vehicles. It would be wise for the US to look over there and see what trials and tribulations China is going through so we can learn from their mistakes and do things proper.
We now pay too much attention to manufacturing cars and batteries, but massive manufacturing will cause massive raw material usage and a large amount of battery disposals, which imposes challenges on later stage processing.
Recovering the cobalt, nickel and other elements in a battery not only improves the sustainability of EVs, but can be a lucrative business as well. GEM has seen its recycling revenue quadruple since 2021 and is on a government whitelist of about 150 key industry players. However, the riches on offer have seen a thriving grey market emerge of smaller players willing to pay higher prices for spent batteries. China's Electronic Energy Saving Technology Association estimates about a fifth of the market is unregulated, lacking the safety equipment to minimise the risk of explosion and release of toxic waste. Policymakers are working on the problem, including traceability around a battery's life cycle. But for now, industry watchers say there's no enforcement to make sure the best practice in China's battery recycling is the only practice.
There's gold in them there hills, folks. Legal, safe recycling is what we want. Something to keep an eye on as the US grows in their EV capacity. No need to make the same mistakes if we don't have to.
Honda is recalling more than 2.5 million vehicles in the U.S. over a fuel pump issue. The recall notice says fuel pump failure could cause the engine to stall while driving, increasing the risk of a crash. The news comes a day after another recall. 1 million Toyota and Lexus vehicles were called over a potential airbag problem. And a week after Tesla announced, remember, an issue with the autopilot system in nearly all of its U.S. vehicles.
Are we really grouping all of these recalls together? We are, aren't we? Oh, let's keep going then.
Are we seeing more recalls in the U.S. year in and year out now, or does it just feel like more recalls, Greg, because we pay that much more attention to them?
There are more recalls, and I think that could actually be taken as a good thing. I think automakers are becoming increasingly proactive. It's much better to get out in front of the issue, sort of try to, help the customer out, tell them how they can remedy the issue and move forward. In this case, the Honda fix is pretty simple. They're just going to replace the fuel pump.
Just replace the fuel pump. That's it. I'm sure Honda will come out into your driveway and fix that for you lickety split, right?
It is a large number of vehicles because they sold a lot of cars. And but basically, it should be a fairly simple fix. And it apparently only affects 1% of the population of the vehicles. But once you know the problem, you got to take care of it.
It feels kind of anecdotally like there have been a lot recently in particular, right? You got this Honda one, you had a Tesla one, there was a Toyota one. Usually, as you say, it's pretty easy to fix. In the case of many of the Tesla ones, it's an over-the-air update, right? Have the car makers changed the way that they approach these compared to how they did in the past?
I think many of them have decided that being upfront, honesty is the best policy. Be proactive. Try to, sort of, be an ally with the customer. Let them know that, hey, the car company that sold you the car stands behind it and that they want to fix it. Because, again, in many of these cases, it's a pretty simple fix. And in the case of Teslas, they can flash it and you're essentially good to go. But no two recalls are exactly alike. Some of them, perhaps sound a little like scarier because it could lead to a fire risk, even if that's perhaps pretty rare. Some of them are like relatively simple, more just like, again, like a fuel pump or something. We've seen all sorts of recalls. I think Tesla, even though the fix is actually pretty simple, they have to recall almost every vehicle they've made going back to 2012. And they didn't really want to do that. Now, behind the scenes, probably a lot of automakers don't necessarily want to do it. But Tesla kind of dug in their heels a little bit before I think it was last week, they actually agreed to do it. So at the end of the day, the recall's out there, and I guess that's all that really matters.
It's amazing how they change their tune when they're not talking about Tesla. Oh, that's just minor. Don't worry about that. It's the end of the world when Tesla has to have an over-the-air software update to improve your vehicle.
When we talk about Honda and Toyota, Greg, here in this context, you're talking about hardware issues, right? With Tesla, when we talk about a recall, we're talking about an over-the-air software update. And correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, you're the car guy, the car guru, but that sounds to me like a much cheaper, easier, faster fix. If you're a Tesla investor, you're listening to this news, you're listening to this segment, are you actually feeling maybe kind of relatively good about your position?
I think if you're a Tesla owner, you might be feeling pretty good for an over-the-air fix because that generally is quicker. Now, with any fix, a lot goes into it beyond what actually happens either, I guess, in cyberspace or at the dealership. Whether it's a hardware fix that does require somebody to, get their hands oily and fix things, or it's a software issue. Somebody does have to, recalibrate, rebuild, recode that software. So that can certainly be complicated behind the scenes as well.
Spoken like a true car guy that has no idea what entails a software update. Getting your hands oily or fixing a line of code, those are the same things, right?
A bombshell report from Reuters claiming that Cybertruck deliveries are, quote, hostage to battery production hell. That is their phrase, not ours. 9 anonymous sources told Reuters that Tesla has not been able to, quote, crack dry coating at the industrial scale needed to make 4,680 batteries fast enough to hit their production targets.
4680 batteries. Who would have thought that creating a new way to do something is going to be somewhat difficult? And words matter. Had yet to crack dry coating at the industrial scale. Not won't crack, not can't crack. Had yet to crack. Just like lidocaine, give it time.
Now, we reached out to Tesla for comment, but have not received a response. And of course, why would we? Because they don't have a PR department. So there's literally, I don't even know who emailed. Anyway, under these circumstances, Reuters says Tesla would only be able to power roughly 24,000 Cybertrucks a year. And if true, it would lead to missed production targets. So should investors take this report as a warning or just another swing at a company? Let's be honest. Some people just love to hate on. Let's talk about it with former Ford CEO and CNBC contributor Mark Fields. Mark, good to have you back on. What's your take on this Reuters report, other than manufacturing is hard?
Yeah, well, manufacturing is hard. And to your point, listen, I think anytime you're introducing a new technology, you're going to go through teething pains. You're seeing it, for example, with GM and trying to scale their Ultium batteries. They're having lots of problems. That's why they haven't had a lot of production. So in Tesla's case, they're actually implementing obviously some new technologies here. As you said, it's a dry technology versus a wet. And, I think Musk, during his launch of the Cybertruck, which are going to use these batteries, what they call these 4680 batteries, he said, hey, listen, we're not going to be fully ramped until mid-2025. So I think he's kind of set some expectations. But I think, Brian, the more important thing is for them to make their 250,000 unit capacity production run at rate in 2025, it's like a 10x increase in their battery production today.
What?
That's very, very aggressive. But, you know, they got time to do it. We'll see if they're able to. But at the end of the day, every automaker is going to be struggling with these issues. We've seen other automakers struggling with them. And, you know, Tesla at the end of the day is a technology and battery company. So when they get through this, you know, they'll be in a pretty good competitive position. But right now, you know, it's tough scaling new technology. Yeah. It's tough going from the lab to production.
This ain't Tesla's first rodeo. Elon Musk vacations in production hell, mind you. Tesla's never been a company to shy away from the difficult problems. I would even posit that their ability to tackle such difficult problems is the reason why their market cap is so high. Turns out, doing the impossible, quite lucrative.
You know, Toyota just had a 1 million car recall due to airbag issues. It got, you know, you could find articles, but it didn't get a lot of attention. Right, relative to everything that happens with Tesla, gets a ton of attention. And you obviously know, Mark, that it's probably because of the founder, Elon Musk. Do you feel like Tesla does get an outsized amount of interest given its relative size and weight in the U.S. and global car markets?
Well, of course they do, right? Just look at the numbers, right? Their production versus, you know, the Toyotas or the VWs. I mean, they're producing 10, 11 million cars a year, and Tesla's, you know, producing less than 2 million. But listen, this is a company that, you know, talk about a key man risk. This is a company that's all about Elon Musk, and he has used very deftly, whether it's his pulpit that he has, whether it's X or his tweets or, you know, his larger than life personality in the media, which he promotes. You know, Tesla and him are a lightning rod for any kind of news. And when you lay on top of it, their valuation and the fact that, you know, a good portion of their shareholders are retails versus institutions.
You bet your we are.
You mix that cocktail together, and anytime Elon Musk sneezes, he's going to make news.
When you're upending an industry, I imagine that you're going to get a lot of attention. When you're upending several industries, I suppose the order of magnitude of attention that you would garner would increase. As far as the attention goes, you can't control that. The news is going to highlight every single mistake that Tesla makes, diminish the gains that they make in technology, production goals, and breakthrough innovation. And while the news media gets it wrong more times than not, the intelligent consumer will do a little bit of digging, go to the Tesla website and be like, I am seeing these things everywhere. There must be a reason. In conclusion, battery recycling is pretty lucrative over there in China. Is there a chance that it could be lucrative over here in the United States? Obviously a recall from Honda, Toyota, Lexus. Those recalls are the exact same thing as when Tesla does an over-the-air software update in order to keep the human more alert. Yeah, I'm sure those fixes are exactly the same. And it's no shocker that these recalls don't get nearly as much airtime or Mercedes dealerships printing out the recalls, unlike Tesla, who gets all of the attention. And it's not for naught. When you're upending an industry, people tend to look. I suppose you take the good with the bad, and there is no such thing as bad publicity. That's all I got for you today. Be easy. Bird.